This is how you go.
Hector, can you hear us?
Can you hear us, Hector?
Yes, I can.
Are you going to chair this, or is it Martha? Martha.
Okay. Okay, I would,
So you're calling.
I
Sorry,
would like to call
Martha.
to order, that's okay, the meeting for the Affordable Housing Trust on Thursday, March 14th at 7:03 PM.
I have one. 7:01.
7:01 PM, sorry.
This is by my computer. I don't have my phone with me.
So we'll just go down the agenda. You have the agenda.
So are we going to do the, okay,
So I think we're just.
on the agenda, we are going to review and approve the meeting notes for, at the next meeting in April. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Um,
Hector, we have them printed here, so we could share that with you, and then we'll vote on those at our April meeting, if that works. Just so that you can have eyes on it too.
That works. Thank you.
Okay,
I'll try to get them on the Google Drive.
okay. And then the third order of business is to review and sign bills. Do we have?
We have no bills this
We have no
evening.
bills, okay. Moving right along. The fourth thing is board member comments. Do we have any member comments?
None.
I have none.
Oh, Chris, no, all set. Number
None for me
5,
tonight. No.
we have the CPC coordination update. And I review the draft application, which was sent to us in a Google Drive this afternoon.
Do you have an agenda? Extra agenda? Can I have one?
Thank you. So, so I'll touch on that a little bit. So, I have a bit of an update on the draft application. So that was provided to the trust for their review. I don't expect us to have gone through it all tonight, but the other key piece to that is we have a draft of a funding agreement. So this is just kind of the standard document that the CPC coalition has for providing the funds going from the CPC to an affordable housing trust. So I think that's going to be a key component that we're going to want to work through and refine and make. That's just a kind of a boilerplate version. We'll want to tailor it to our specific needs, both for the trust and for CPC. So it'll be kind of a coordinated effort of figuring out how that works from a logistics standpoint. So I think that's going to be a key component to this. I think the draft application is fairly well put together at this point, but certainly we can review that and have comments provided. Anything that you like that members would like to see updated, they can provide that to our office, and we're happy to make edits to the application. But I think it is substantially complete at this point. So for that, we'll be targeting a possible fall town meeting for that. So that's the timeline that we're looking at. So we have some time to kind of refine. But I think, again, the key piece to that is going to be the funding agreement document, and we'll have to do that kind of jointly with the CPC. So I think there's kind of two avenues to do that. We have time, so we can kind of refine it from our end and suggest it to the CPC once we've had some time to work with it. I'm also happy to provide it to CPC and kind of have them review it at the same time, and we can kind of coordinate together on that. To refine that process, it may be beneficial for the trust to delegate 2 members as a working group that can work with. Likewise, we could ask that CPC delegate 2 members as a working group, which will create 4 people that can work together and then report back to the trust and CPC as they make progress. That'll just allow us to kind of work outside of the regular meeting hours to really refine that document and get to a place where we can both vote on them. But I'll defer to the trust in terms of which avenue they'd like, if they'd like to formalize, some delegates to work on that, or if they want to just work through the regular meetings at this stage.
You looking for us to do that, to talk about that?
Yeah.
So if we,
Just any thoughts there?
I think having two people from the trust to work more closely with the CPC people would be very helpful and move things along a little bit faster than waiting from month to month. Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, whatever partnership we can have there, you know, I think would be best to move this along. So I'm open to that as well.
Absolutely agree with that.
I'm okay with that as well.
So would we like to, you know, actually, just for, since we haven't put it on the agenda, what I can do is for our next meeting, we'll put for nomination, 2 delegates. And that'll give me time to approach CPC with that idea as well and make sure that that is something that they're amenable to as well. But you know, in the meantime, if there's people that are interested in being a part of that, happy to hear those interest levels. And then at our next meeting, we can set that up and have that working group to start kind of digging into the specifics of the funding agreement.
Okay. All right.
Chris, I did just have one question on, like the CPA funds, from the CPC. Can you just remind me, I think I've asked this before, but, if the CPC were to, give us sort of like an annual, allocation at, you know, that they would recommend, would they still have final approval on whatever we decide to use those funds on?
Yeah, so, and I think that's a detail that we're going to want to memorialize in this funding agreement. So in the draft one that the Community Preservation Coalition provides, there's not really any language to that effect, but I think we'll probably want to memorialize that in our agreement. And the process I would suggest, and that, you know, we can discuss with CPC, would be that, you know, they would have, you know, the specifics outline of the funding and, you know, the funds being delegated. So they actually would, you know, it's required to be held in a separate account. So we would have a detailed amount of, this is the amount that CPC has provided to the trust. As a project came along where the trust wanted, you know, found value in tapping those specific funds, what I would suggest is similar to any other project. We would again go through this process for that specific project of the eligibility application and the funding application that they do. What that would simply do is that, you know, the funds would already be in the trust control. We would have town meeting have voted for that allocation. So it provides that nimbleness that we don't then have to wait until the next town meeting. But I think in terms of public process, we'll still want to have, you know, the public hearing on the specific project that we find, and we'll still want to go through the process with CPC, much like any other specific project that we would have.
Great, thank you, Chris. And I do think that's a point that we really want to drive home to the CPC. And I'm sure it's, you know, we gotta, I think you said we have to draft that language, or it's already in there, or?
No, so it's not in there, and I think that's, you know,
Oh, okay, got it.
those specific logistics of how that works. I think that's where the funding agreement is really going to be the key
Got it.
key part. I know CPC in their discussion of this arrangement, that's been a lot of their question.
Yeah.
As is with the trust. So I think that's where we'll find that clarity, is when we kind of work through that at a working group level. We can figure out those logistics of what works. And how we want to phrase that in the funding agreement to outline that process.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I would just underscore it. I think that's important for them to realize and for us to work together on that, so that they know that they still have control, that they would still have control, and we still would go through the public hearing process through the CPC. So, it's not like they're blindly giving the trust the money and then not really knowing where it's going. So I think that's great. So
Right.
appreciate
Right. Yeah.
your help with that.
And I think that came up at the last meeting too, is
It
that
did.
even after we're allocated the funds, they still can have some oversight as to what project that those funds are used for.
Right.
Can they restrict the amount of funds to a project? I read something in there. If we request, if they give us a certain amount of funds and then want X amount, can they say, we're only going to give you this amount towards that project? Can they lower it if they wanted to, or withhold some funds?
Yeah, so I think that would probably be something that would have to work through that eligibility and funding application phase when we have a specific project. And again, that's, I think, a logistics that the funding agreement will have to kind of outline of how that'll work. But I think when we have a specific project, we'll be kind of going through that. You'll note in the boilerplate funding agreement, there is language that says, like, I think it's 10% to be allocated, no more than 10% to be allocated to administration of the trust. So there could be like similar language like that if CPC had some, specific concerns that they wanted to have, authorizing a certain amount that they could do. And it does say in the kind of notes related to that provision in that boilerplate agreement that's at the discretion of CPC or the trust of how that amount and that percentage. That's an example of how we can kind of, the trust and CPC can work through language to organize how those funds get spent.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any more questions, comments? Okay. Then we'll move on to 5B, the review of the final strategic plan.
Yeah, so I know at the trust last meeting, they reviewed this with Louise. I apologize, I wasn't able to attend that meeting, but I know that the trust went through that. And I didn't know if there's any other follow-up that we wanted to have on that in terms of kind of, allocating resources to specific tasks. I'm happy to run through that again. The final strategic plan and that action plan that's been provided. But I just wanted to leave that as a discussion item for now. If there's any other follow-up that we needed on that.
The only thing I had from the minutes of the last meeting was that the final copy was going to be uploaded to the Google Drive. I just don't know if that's happened yet.
Thank you. If it hasn't, I will make sure that we add it.
Okay. Any more comments, questions? Okay. And then we have the action plan task review. Is that pretty much the same?
Sorry, that was part of it.
Okay. Okay. And then we had the Habitat, number 5C, Habitat for Humanity outreach update.
Yeah, thank you. So we did reach out to Habitat for Humanity. That was one of the discussion pieces from previous meetings, and we did sit down. We were able to work with Habitat to kind of discuss their kind of capacity. It was a really good meeting, and I think we were able to get an understanding of some of the project scale that they have. They've actually really recently been expanding their capacity, working towards an ability to do more units than they have in the past annually. We're still not in the range of what our needs are for our kind of SHI numbers annually, but they are able to do a number of multifamily units and over duplexes as well, or single family. So we'd like to continue that discussion with Habitat and see what projects we can work through. There'll still be a little bit of a smaller scale but I think those sometimes have a big impact. So we'll continue that discussion with them. But preliminarily, it's going very well. If the trust is interested, I could reach out and suggest a meeting of Habitat for Humanity with the trust at a meeting like this to kind of discuss their capacity in a little bit more detail and answer any questions. But we don't have a specific project in mind right now, but we're going to work through evaluating some possibilities that we might be able to pitch to the trust and to Habitat.
Okay. Chris, I was able to attend that Zoom, and I had a question.
that's right.
So when Joe was talking, and they said they'd be looking for funding between 25 and 50% of the project to be funded by the AHT or CPC, something like that. Does that mean that they would use the money, the rest of the money that they have to fund the rest of the project, or would they be raising money from other organizations?
Yeah, I believe it may be from other organizations or from their funding sources. I wasn't clear on that as well. But they would be looking for the 25%, whether it's the trust or CPC for that as a contribution to their project. So, but I'm not entirely clear if it's outside funding sources that make up the balance of that, or if they have. I know they have some funds available to them.
Yeah,
And I think it may be from a balance that they hold, because they did mention that they've received some additional funding this year, which is part of why they're able to increase their capacity more recently.
okay. I'd like to keep those lines of communication open with them, definitely.
Absolutely.
It's a good,
It sounds like they might be a very nice partner.
yes.
Yeah, and I'd be open to having them come before us at any point, so that we can
Okay.
have that discussion too with them.
And then one other question regarding that meeting. Is there, do you know if there's some sort of list that town property has, that the town has property that could be rehabbed or purchased or, built on, anything like that?
Yeah, that's part of the follow-up, and I haven't
Okay.
had a chance yet to dig into that. I don't, our office doesn't necessarily maintain vacant residential. We do have some, vacant commercial industrial lists that we have that, we can look at some of that space if it's conducive to, apartments and some of that, mixed use kind of a thing. But I'd meant to reach out to some of the other departments that might have some lists of that of properties that need some kind of investment, but would also be able to operate at a affordable level. I think one of the things that I notice is a lot of times there's market rate apartments that, just because of market conditions, are already within those affordable ranges, but they're not deed restricted. And so I think there may be opportunity there to collaborate with some of those, whether it's funding for rehab or for whatever, and the caveat being that we would get a deed restriction out of it. It would bring those market rate units that are operating essentially as affordable units, but would bring them potentially onto our SHI.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, so number 6 on the agenda is old business. 6A is 11 Elizabeth Street.
Thank you. So the 11 Elizabeth Street, so this was a proposal I think we preliminarily had before the trust for a number of meetings, and I apologize for not getting the materials over to you earlier for the last meeting. This item, I did encourage the Housing Authority to pursue both an application to the trust and an application to CPC concurrently, just to keep their options open. This request is for $7,000 for a feasibility study related to generating units at the 11 Elizabeth Street parcel. There are some kind of draft conceptual plans that have been provided. The feasibility study would then take this to a higher level of schematic design and analysis of kind of zoning and other considerations in terms of getting towards more of a schematic and implementation phase. The CPC has voted, I believe it was to authorize this as an eligible project, and we'll be having a hearing on the actual funding application and potential proposal for Maytown meeting. I think this is an opportunity again. Obviously, the trust is a little bit more nimble with their funds. We'd be able to authorize the 7,000 if the trust found it amenable, and those would become available pretty much, very, very soon after this meeting. So it would provide, in terms of timeline, that nimbleness to move the project along without having to wait all the way till town meeting. Certainly, we could wait and see the outcome of town meeting, or we could act and essentially move quicker than what the current CPC process is. Again, I kind of defer to the trust of, what they feel is the most appropriate action. I do think, obviously, that's, the nimbleness of our funds is something that we've been kind of discussing as the benefit, especially when we talk about our application to CPC in terms of having them provide us an allocation that we're then going through the process. So I think this kind of is a project that may demonstrate that nimbleness of funds and maybe some value in actually showing that and moving this project forward quicker, but I'll defer to the trust in terms of that.
Well, I think it would be a show of good faith if we did want to think about it and take a vote on it, even today, if we're ready to take a vote to move forward.
I'm a fan of this project. I think it works, it's a nice partnership with another town entity. I mean, even though they're not directly under the town. And it helps us with our goals. It fits into the goals from that Jen Goldson developed.
Right,
So,
right, and
I mean, I think it's just a win-win project, so I'm a fan. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it's good for us to start building those partnerships across the community, to let the community know that we're here to help, and these are our goals, and it's one of our shared goals with the housing authority. So I think that certainly I would be in favor of partnering with them on this project. So I am also in support of funding this.
Yeah.
Hector, are you?
Yeah, and I agree with everyone. I mean, that's what we're here for. This is what the committee's here, and this is just a good example here, the first one where there is a need, there's an ask, and we're prepared to do it. And I think from hearing here, we're all in agreement.
Okay. So should I make a motion?
Motion.
Do I make the motion?
Well, the actor just made a motion, or is it okay? We got to check in with our expert over here.
Am I the expert?
You're the expert. Either that or I'll move.
So
I'll
it has
move
to be a
for the
roll
vote.
call vote because Hector's online. So you would have to call the roll call.
But don't we need to move in
Once it's
second?
moved and seconded, so someone would need to make a motion.
Somebody would need
I'll
to
make
make
the
a motion.
I will make a
to-
motion, since I'm a fan of this. I'm
Okay.
going to make a motion that we vote on to approve $7,000 for a feasibility study to the Shrewsbury Housing Authority.
Okay.
I'll second.
Carlos?
Hector,
Second?
yes, second.
All right,
Okay.
so now we roll call vote.
Now roll call vote.
I don't know, what do I say?
Just the names and then Aye.
Okay, Beth,
Aye.
Carlos,
Aye.
Hector,
Aye.
myself, aye.
There we go.
So motion to vote yes.
Approved.
Oh, approved.
And Chris, will you communicate that over to the Housing Authority and, I guess, the CPC?
Thank you. Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll communicate that over to CPC as well as Housing Authority. What I'll also do, even though it's under the threshold, I'll also communicate that over to the Select Board, just as they are noted in our bylaws as a partner for some funds. So just so that they receive the notification as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 6B, MHP applications, housing production plan.
Yeah, thank you. So we're working on developing our MHP application for the housing production plan, as well as the RFP for that. So we're making progress on that. I'm hoping to get that in the next month or so, and hopefully be, successful in acquiring funding for that project. And we're moving along on that. So our housing production plan is, if it's not expired already, is very close to expiration. So we're a little bit behind in getting that done. So we'll be putting a very quick timeline on getting that updated. But I am excited in seeing progress in that and getting, especially with the new census data. I don't anticipate too much in terms of the changes to the narrative and some of the trends that we saw, but I do anticipate that they've likely increased in terms of some of the housing costs. We all know that's been increasing, and some of the housing needs, I think, likewise are going to be exacerbated from some of the market conditions. But I'm excited to see the data behind it and the outreach that goes along with that as well, and what that develops out of that process. So hopefully we're successful in that funding. If not, we'll review the other process of moving forward.
Okay, any question, comments on that? Okay, the second part, the economic feasibility analysis in the,
Yeah,
with the
so,
MBTA zoning, sorry.
Yeah, so this is the second, this is the other MHP application that we submitted. We actually were successful in receiving funding for this project, and MHP has delegated a consultant to us to complete that scope of work. We met with the consultant and talked about our timeline, especially with the ties of this process to our MBTA zoning. We anticipate that within the next few weeks, we should have that economic feasibility analysis complete, at least in some draft form. So we'll have a good idea of where we're able to go with that feasibility analysis. So we're happy to have received that funding and be moving forward quickly with that feasibility analysis. I was happy to hear that the timeline would meet May. I thought we were going to be a little tighter on timeline, so I was happy to hear that the consultant was able to complete the work within that short span of time.
Okay, great. Questions, comments? The MBTA zoning, does that tie in?
Yeah, so the MBTA zoning, part of the impetus for undertaking the economic feasibility analysis is in relation to our MBTA zoning proposal. So what the economic feasibility analysis will allow us to do, if it justifies it through the collection of data and the analysis, may authorize us to pursue either deeper affordability, whether it's lower than the 80% AMI or more than the 10% affordable housing that is currently capped. We may be able to go all the way up to 20% for projects, requiring 20% of the project to be restricted for affordable housing. And then what that does, if we're able to get the 20%, we may be able to pursue an application for the zoning to be considered under 40R, Chapter 40R as well, which just provides some additional fiscal benefits to the community. It wouldn't change the zoning in any way other than that affordability component. So it's really just positioning ourselves in order to be able to pursue that funding if, if the economic feasibility analysis justifies it.
Okay. Anybody comments, questions? Further? Okay, number 7, correspondence. Do we have any correspondence?
No correspondence for this evening.
Okay, then number 8, does anybody have anything else? Call the meeting?
We gotta make a motion.
I would like
so.
to make a motion.
When's our April meeting,
Oh,
before you do that?
okay.
That's a great question.
Let me just
Only
make
'cause
sure I
it's
get the right, April 11th.
April.
April 11th.
Make a meeting, what do I say? Make a meeting to what? End the meeting? Make a motion?
Yes.
And it'll be in this room, Chris?
Let me just double check I booked it. I should have. Yes, I have 7 PM in the select board's meeting room.
Great.
Great. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
And now we have to do a roll call again.
Okay. Carlos.
Aye.
Beth.
Aye.
Hector.
Aye.
And I, Martha Gannon, aye. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're adjourned
Thank you.
7:33. All right, perfect.
All right, thank you guys, 'cause